I was 16 in my junior year in high school. My school day consisted of 9 periods. The 5th period was lunch, and my science class followed immediately after. My astronomy lesson was held in one of the 2 basement classrooms of the school. My high school was large. There were 3 levels, but even that wasn't enough to accommodate all of the subjects offered, so the school erected 2 classrooms in the basement. It was actually kind of spooky down there when no one else was there. It was once a janitorial area, but it has now been rebuilt to look more like a regular hallway. There were no intercoms or microphones in the basement at the time. As a result, no courses were held down there. First period, during the morning announcements, everyone referred to this small section of the basement as the chamber, and everyone always hoped to obtain classes down there because it was air-conditioned and the classes were generally easier. It also had its own bathroom down there. We had an astronomy quiz that day. The class was easy, so I was usually the first to finish. After finishing my quiz, I contacted my friend, who was in the other basement classroom, to meet me in the restroom because I was bored. He assured me that everything was fine. I stepped out of the classroom and down the short hallway to the restroom. A few seconds later, the door opened and my friend JJ entered the restroom. We were messing around for a while when JJ checked his phone and saw that someone had texted him that the school was going on lockdown. We both had the same grin. We had free run of the school when it was on lockdown because nobody of our teachers observed us leave the classrooms. We decided to sneak upstairs and look through the halls just for fun. The worst that could happen is that we'd have to explain why we couldn't hear the announcements in basement classes. When we opened the basement entrance to the main level, we were surprised to see that all of the lights had been turned out, leaving the hallways almost completely dark, except for the light coming in through the lobby doors. This was accurate because the lights were typically left on in the hallways during lockdowns. Something was up, and we weren't sure that walking was safe. JJ went out further into the corridor, and I followed suit. JJ peered down the hall and asked, "Who's that?" I glanced, and a man emerged from the darkness. We couldn't determine if he was a teacher at first, but as he got closer, we saw he wasn't dressed like any other staff member. He looked like a bum. "All right, let's go," I told JJ as we ran back to the basement. He definitely spotted us, whomever he was. We noticed that both classroom doors were closed and the lights were turned off, so we decided to hide in the bathroom to avoid causing a commotion. I turned off the light first, and we hid in the corner stall. The chamber was completely silent, with no ventilation, heaters, or anything. Just me and JJ breathing, with the occasional drip from the sink. The bathroom door suddenly opened, letting in light from the corridor. For a brief moment, the door closed, and the bathroom became pitch black. JJ and I tried our best to keep our breaths under control. The room was so silent that we could hear someone walking over to our side of the restroom. The guy paused and began breathing deeply, as if they were out of breath. JJ and I were both terrified to death. JJ did something stupid. He whispered in my ear, "We have to crawl out through the other stalls." The atmosphere was so silent that JJ's whisper could be heard from across the room. The heavy breathing outside the stall subsided, and the individual attempted to force the stall door. That was when I whispered, "Go, go," to JJ. After crawling under the side wall, we went to the next stall and then out the other side of the restroom. The individual was now repeatedly knocking on the stall door. JJ and I hopped up off the floor, opened the door, and as the light returned to the room, we noticed the guy from upstairs in the corner. We beat on the door to JJ's class, and the instructor let us in. Within seconds, JJ recounted everything as the teacher locked the door, including a gun protruding out of the man's pocket. I was surprised to hear this because I had not seen a gun, but I went along with it anyway. Normally, a group of high school students would be laughing their asses off at two students, causing a scene like this, but I saw that all of the kids sitting in the corner appeared concerned. A rapid bang on the door startled everyone, and a couple of females squealed in panic. JJ, the teacher, and I noticed the man standing at the door, staring through the window and attempting the doorknob. After a few bangs on the door, he turned and walked down the hallway back to the stairs, clearly angry. We don't know how long the lockdown lasted, but for more than an hour, we sat quietly in the room, with the teacher sometimes asking me and JJ questions in a concerned tone and shaking his head after everything we told him. Someone from upstairs eventually contacted the teacher, who ordered us all to walk up the stairs and out of the building in a single file, where we would be met by cops. Me and JJ did our best to describe the man to the officers and the dean. One of the cops felt my back before sending us home. Following this occurrence, the school installed cameras everywhere and increased its security budget. We never found out if police caught the guy because this incident received little public notice. I'm confident that dude had no other plans but to kill us right there in that restroom cubicle. I am a former New Jersey police officer. Throughout my 20 years in the force, the most unsettling call I ever received was for a school lockdown at a local middle school, which I will not name for legal reasons. It occurred on a windy, dark day. My car number was called on the radio in response to a lockdown after a suspicious-looking man was seen stepping out of a white van parked behind a school and walking into the back entrance near the boys' locker room. I parked in the back lot of the school, directly next to the white van. Nobody was inside, and all of the doors and trunks were locked. I unlocked the crimson rear door that led into the gym hallway near the locker rooms. The main lights had been switched off, leaving the whole inside of the school black. I unholstered the lamp from my belt and used it to explore the corridors. I made it to the school foyer, where a woman appeared from the front office, discreetly instructing me to check the boys' locker room, but to be cautious, because the person could be armed. I phoned for backup on my radio and was assured it was already on its way. I returned to the corridor from which I had entered, and the boys' locker room was just next to the exit. No windows in the rooms, so only the flashlight illuminated that locker room. I silently opened it. There was a white noise in the room, probably from a vent on the roof blowing air, but I could also hear slight scraping or dings on the locker doors on the other side. I was meant to announce my status as a police officer, but I was honestly too terrified. The stress level in the room was ridiculous. I sneaked to the other side of the locker room, holding my flashlight in one hand and my revolver in the other. The dings and thuds seemed to come from the opposite side of the room, no matter where I was. I was standing in the corner of the locker room, right next to the restroom door, when the sound of someone slamming a locker door from another room startled me. I proceeded to the location where I heard the slam and discovered that it came from the boys' football team change room. There was no door between the main dressing room and the football locker room, and the lockers in here were 3 times the size. I eventually mustered the courage to make my presence known by shouting, "Police!" After yelling, a child began screaming for aid from somewhere in the room. However, the sound was rather muffled. The kid banged on a locker door on the opposite side of the row I was in. When I discovered that the youngster was trapped inside a locker, I felt ill to my stomach. I promised him I'd be right back, phoning for aid and going outside to find the white van. It was gone. My worst error was not acquiring the plate number initially. I instructed dispatch to look for an odd white van. I dashed back inside the school and urged the front office personnel to close the school day and send someone with a key to the locker area to bring the boy out. As I imagined, the man held the youngster with a knife on his back. The man was gently attempting to direct the 12-year-old youngster to his van. The boy's arm was bleeding from a cut caused by the man during the battle. The man's van was discovered a week later in a 7-Eleven parking lot, and he was apprehended after being properly identified. I slept at a Hampton Inn in New Jersey while visiting Rowan University, which I was considering attending. My family couldn't join me, so I was on my own. After the campus tours, I went to a local restaurant for a bite to eat before returning to the hotel around 8 p.m., with plans to return to school the next day. About an hour after returning to my room, an unusual alarm went off, and a white light flashed from the corner of the ceiling. Shortly after, a message began to loop, stating something like, "All Hampton Inn guests, please remain in your rooms." This is a lockdown. I never heard of a hotel lockdown. I had no idea hotels have these types of alerts. I found it more engaging and exciting than anything else. The alarm eventually stopped, but the light continued to flash, and the message repeated every 20 seconds or so. It was only about 9:30 a.m., so I switched on the TV for background noise while I changed clothes and brushed my teeth. When I was finished, I turned off the lights and got under the covers. I watched television for half an hour before turning it off. The light was still flashing an unpleasant bright white every few seconds, which was surely going to disrupt my sleep. I was about to call the front desk to find out when the phone rang. It was someone from the front desk. I expected them to notify me about the alarm and when it would go off, but the person on the other end talked in a concerned tone. She instructed me to be calm and walk out the door. I used the chance to ask her what was going on. "There was someone in the room with me," she said, "so leave immediately." I dropped the phone and instantly began looking around. Part of me was curious to check if someone was actually in the room. I looked beneath the bed and into the empty bathroom. There is nobody in either spot. Then I noticed the closet door adjacent to the bathroom. It was one of those closets with wooden sliding doors. There was only a tiny crack open, and I could see a person's face through it. At first, what I was witnessing didn't register, but when the door sliding shut, I freaked out and raced out. The front desk staff showed me security footage from an hour earlier of a sketchy-looking man strolling around the hallways, seemingly hunting for a certain room. When he went to my door, he opened it with the card he had somehow obtained, and that was it. I stayed as the authorities led the person out in chains. It was a short man, perhaps in his 40s. He gazed at me as he passed, as if he recognized who I was. The possibility that he watched me from that closet for over an hour is unsettling.